listening to The Starting Zone, a podcast about World of Warcraft and the people who play it. And now, here are your hosts.
Well, hello and welcome to The Starting Zone, the podcast about World of Warcraft, people who play it. Today is July 13th, 2022, and my name is Spencer Downey. Thank you so much for listening and subscribing to the podcast. Man, it is late in the evening on the 13th, and we are recording this after having a great old conversation with Mr. Morgan Day. We got a chance to experience a alpha experience for media and community, which was really awesome. And we had that for about 24 hours at this point, and Jason and I sort of spelled off spending time playing it, and it's been a really, really good time. So this episode is a supplementary episode to our normal weekly episode, and it will contain both our experiences so far in playing the alpha, first impressions, as well as later on in the episode, the interview with Morgan Day. So feel free to enjoy this whole bonus supplementary episode. Jason, how are you doing this evening? Are you losing your voice too?
I'm doing great. Yeah, it's been it's been a really long week. First of all, thanks to our friends at the Warcraft team for inviting us to this event and letting us poke around inside the Dragonflight Alpha preview and sit down and pick Morgan's brain for a little bit earlier today. Always a pleasure and a privilege. And it's we kind of got poked about this last week, and it was like, oh man, it's really bad timing for me because I have all kinds of stuff going on at work and in my personal life. And it's like, well, can I squeeze in actually playing enough of the alpha to have like anything insightful to think or say about it? And then can we also squeeze in all of this recording before I have to leave for my mini vacation? And the answer was, yeah, probably. So, it's been, it's kind of it's been really hectic, but we've been waiting for this for so long. As you're listening to this, alpha servers are going out there.
Yep.
The first wave of invites are going to be happening Thursday, tomorrow, and embargoes are being lifted and stuff. So you'll see video content, you'll see people streaming it and everything. So, man, I mean, technically, I've been waiting for this since the end of BFA. I've been waiting for this since BlizzCon 19 when Shadowlands got announced, and I was at Con Before the Storm on the WoW podcast panel, and I was like, I want dragons. I want dragons in the next expansion. Yep. And we knew it was going to be Shadowlands at that point, but so yeah, that's here we are. We're everything's going to be ramping up. I would imagine pretty quickly at this point. I don't really. It's funny because right now, like, we don't even know what is the difference going to be between the alpha preview we were playing for the last couple of days and the alpha that goes out. There's no difference tomorrow. So
there's no difference that we know of. Yeah.
So it's kind of weird because like what we were playing is not the beginning of the expansion.
Yeah,
it's sort of this curated experience that's like much later on in the campaign, which is a little jarring, honestly. But it was still really cool. I want to talk about
before we dive into that, I want to set a little bit more of a stage as to what sort of happened. So basically Friday we got the news that this was going to be something we had access to. Tuesday we got the news that there was potentially an interview with Morgan. And so, yes, we have sort of been scrambling to sort of piece things together, and we got access to it essentially on late Tuesday night, Wednesday morning. Well, I guess it was Wednesday morning we got access to it. And so I got to play about 5 hours, and Jason got to play throughout the day a little bit as well. And yes, you're right. It is a curated experience. So basically, this zone, the entire experience takes place inside one zone, it's the Azure Strand, and it basically is a level 65 experience. That's where you start out. You start the alpha experience porting into Stormwind. There's all of the ginormous, like, massively upscaled vendors that they put inside all the alphas and betas and PTR. And one of the vendors teleports you to this particular zone and sets your level to 65. You can create pretty much any character you want, although not all of them are actually complete, in the sense that not all their abilities work. So the one class that seemed to have all the abilities working and clicking and functioning properly in every way seemed to be Drakthir, which doesn't surprise me at all, since that's the one that I think most people are going to be poking around with initially inside alpha. And so you can, in fact, log in and make other characters. I logged in and made a druid, and it was just broken enough that like Wild Charge didn't work, and like a bunch of talents that you expect to do didn't work, and a bunch of talent tree stuff isn't complete, and a bunch of tooltips don't work, and it's very alpha. So I was like, okay, well let's bounce over off of this once I've sort of played around with it enough to get a handle on it. We'll talk about it a little bit later, and I'll do the Drakthir sort of experience and level that up. And you were able to level up. I actually got a Drakthir to 67, partway to 68. Just to sort of see what that experience was like and how many talent points you got and that kind of stuff to play with. And so the zone itself that you're in has a quest chain. I'm not going to talk about what the quest chain is because we don't want to spoil anything for people. But the quest chain basically is a zone quest with a few other little quests spread out throughout the zone. And you can do all that questing content, but that quest, just like in most situations for leveling inside World of Warcraft, sends you to another zone to be able to move on to the next stage of the quest, and you couldn't leave the zone that we were in. It would boot you back. So that was the framework and limitations around the testing that existed. But there were lots of things, Jason, in this testing. We had dragon riding, we had talent trees, we had Drakthir, we didn't have dungeons. There were no dungeons in the alpha at the moment. So you couldn't really do anything with that. But
we did have a new UI is in, and the editor is a work in progress, but there is stuff you can do with it. So, all that stuff was there and testable. The only the existing classes, classes you could play in WoW right now, of those, it's only the ones that they've released talent previews for that I think are on actual new data. I made a warrior and then immediately went, because I pushed N and my talents came up and it was Shadowlands talents.
Yes.
So I made a druid, and I was messing around with that because I wanted to mess with the new talent system and see how that played out and felt. And, there's some placeholders and some stuff that's not implemented yet and some stuff that doesn't work. But, it's a preview alpha. I'm not expecting it to be a polished product. But I did have fun. I went heavy Moonfire build on the druid, and it was just kind of wacky because I'd be running around the forest just moonfiring everything, and everything's exploding, and it felt really good. It was like laser bear style, but it was way more intense than what we've had with laser bear style builds in the last couple expansions. There was just moonfires going everywhere. It was really fun.
Yeah, there's definitely I would say at least a 3-hour really good time to play with experience in the alpha that we had. The stuff outside of that was probably time I spent sitting and staring at a talent tree. The number one thing I would caution everyone, and I'll just do this multiple times throughout the episode, this is very alpha. This is preview alpha of what we were experiencing, and if what they release tomorrow, which is what we have been told they're releasing, is the same thing as what we've been experiencing, it's very preview alpha, and they want tons of feedback, and they still have lots of stuff to implement. There's still a lot of I think Morgan actually used the term rough edges to shave down, to try and get stuff working the way it's supposed to. So there was stuff a great example here is inside the Resto Druid talent tree, right? I'm going down the talent tree. I want to choose all the Resto Druid talents. One of the requirements to get to increase all of your healing done and received by 6% is to pick remove corruption. The actual dispel that you get as a boomkin and everything else currently is a talent that you choose inside of the Druid tree. And then you go over to the Resto tree and you work your way through the Resto tree. And that's when you eventually realize, wait a second, Nature's Cure is baseline for Resto Druids. If you're in Resto spec, you just have Nature's Cure. But now you also still have Remove Corruption. And Remove Corruption removes curses and poisons. And Nature's Cure removes curses, poisons, and magic. And they share the same cooldown. So why would Remove Corruption be a required talent to take in order to get 6% more healing and healing received when it's baseline Nature's Cure inside Resto Druid talent tree? So that kind of stuff is the type of stuff he's talking about. They're still working on sort of implementing fixes and tuning and changes to things. They recognize that stuff exists and it's rampant and it's everywhere. As Jason said, this is not a polished product, so don't expect it to be.
Don't go like trawling the internet this weekend for optimized builds for your spec of choice.
Yeah, don't start running
exist.
sims.
Like it's not going to matter in any appreciable way. Don't get. I mean, I think the big thing here to keep in mind is like at this point with the way this stuff is built out for testing, like don't get bogged down in the minutia of like numbers and synergies and stuff too much, because all this stuff is subject to change. It's more about like right now establishing the feel, establishing the function, and making sure that they're pointing you in directions that you want to go in, I think. And then you might see a lot of overreaction, I think, because based on what I'm seeing in the trees, I mean, I was only really looking at Druid, but a lot of stuff was marked as placeholder, marked as not implemented. Even if you took the talent, a lot of times you couldn't drag the ability onto a bar and use it.
Or if you did, it was just grayed out and you just couldn't use it.
Yeah, sometimes you would, and we would get on the bar and then it would be something different and it would say that it didn't work, right? So, there may be some people who are looking at this stuff and like reading way too much into it or overreacting. I mean, I think the devs want people to test it and have fun with it and try to do cool stuff and feedback on what they like and don't like about it. But like, let's not fly off the balance handle day one of alpha with this level of overhaul across the entire class design space. That's
my request, that people out there don't go like don't get incredibly worked up over something they see initially. Like, this is the moment for you to 100% voice concerns about things in a reasonable and calm, and they have 6 months to fix this kind of way. Not in a, oh my goodness, this is in this state right now, they're never going to be able to fix this in 6 months, this is terrible kind of way. So yeah, anyways, moving into the stuff that we want to talk about. I want to start off with UI, because it is just like one of the biggest revamps that we've seen. Since we've already sort of covered talents, I feel like we sort of covered talents. As far as UI goes, there are tons of new things. There's a new cast bar, which is really pretty and shiny. It has like gold involved in it whenever you're casting things, which is pretty cool.
It's not just one color. It's got multiple different colors, and there's like VFX on the bars. It's a small thing, but it really modernizes the look of the game out of the box, I feel like. And it definitely stood out to me, and it's not just your own cast bar, it's enemy cast bars and stuff like that. If you're showing other, nameplates, that all the cast bars and the breath bar even got a little bit of a glow up here. Like all the UI elements got, from what I can tell, I mean, like plates are still the same in this build, and I don't know if plates are going to get any kind of rework. I'm not sure that they really need one, but a lot of the other elements that we've had for going on 18 years in the live game got overhauled and polished up and looking like they belong in 2022.
Yeah, the as far as plates go, the one thing that I could hope they do with plates is allow them to organize on your screen better than they currently do, as opposed to just being a big, massive ball of overlapping frame stuff.
You have two options, overlapping and stacking, and neither one of them are really great.
Yeah, I would like something that could actually create a block of usable frames in some way, or give me the ability to have multiple enemy target, things pop up. Like something, an add-on I currently run when I'm raiding is basically for boss frames. This is something that a lot of people have, where I can target not just the boss, but like on Pantheon, I can target each of the bosses, and I have a separate little like target window for each and every single one of them, as opposed to just having what I'm actually physically targeting. And I can click on each one and cast on each one that way. I would love to see something that you could actually populate at least up to 8 targets or whatever on an area of your screen, scale it down so it's not ginormous or whatever, but you do a pull, and not only do you have the stuff in front of you, but you can choose to turn on an actual UI element that gives you a targeting frame for each of the 8 things that you pull. That would be really cool. I think that'd be super helpful for a lot of people too. So that would be neat to see as far as that goes. When it comes to the rest of the UI, like every single icon, like all of your character slash collections slash achievements, all those sorts of like icon tabs you click on, those all got updated. They're all like a gray with like a no background to them. There's a 5th bag slot. Can we just talk about that for a second? There's like an additional bag slot that's there for reagents that you're going to be able to carry around. That's pretty cool. One of my favorite touches UI-wise with the bags is the your original backpack that exists there. They've now finally implemented a actual visual in-game, hey, you are missing out on 4 bag slots if you don't have an authenticator / second tier of security on your account. They actually, when you log into the game, when you open up your bag, if you do not have an authenticator, so most people won't see this because I assume you all have one, so you probably won't even know this is a feature, but this is a feature now where you log into the game, and when you open up your initial backpack, there's actually a plus sign inside of a green circle next to 4 locked bag spaces. If you click on that plus sign, it does a pop-up on your screen that says, hey, if you want to unlock these, follow these steps to attach an authenticator to your account, and you'll unlock these 4 bag slots. So I was like, that's really smart. Good on them. Very happy to see that.
Just always trying to get people to take advantage of 2FA and cut down on account compromises and customer support tickets.
Exactly.
So there's just no excuse not to have one. But yeah, the extra bag slot is kind of interesting. That's a neat addition. It's kind of funny in the implementation in the alpha at the moment, though, because like you make a template character, they give you a whole bunch of stuff. They give you bags, but they don't give you a bag for that slot. So it's just kind of sitting there. But they redrew like the action bar bookends, those kind of griffins, and they look it. I'm somebody who for the most part uses a standard UI, and I like it. I mean, it's just familiar to me, right? And they redid a bunch of elements of it. They redrew stuff, and there's new assets, but it still feels like the baseline WoW UI for the most part. But you can also add an extra row of buttons, and you can move stuff around.
Let's talk about edit mode a little bit. I want to talk about edit mode.
It doesn't like entirely work yet, obviously, in this build. Like, I'm not surprised it doesn't entirely work yet, but it's a really cool addition, and it seems pretty intuitive. You just enter edit mode and start, editing your UI.
Yeah, so basically, edit mode, as Jason said, you can just hit escape, and there'll be an edit mode option you can click on, and that makes your entire screen basically go. And I've talked about this add-on before, Dominoes, that I really like. It basically makes your whole screen sort of semi-gray with grid line kind of idea, and you can move whatever bar around you want and other bars around that you want, stack them on top of each other, add additional bars. You can move all the elements of your UI around, move your bags around, move stuff around that you really want to move around, which is great. So they're finally sort of adapting, from seeing these other add-ons that are so useful to people when they're designing the UI. You can even turn on and off the bookends. If you're someone who doesn't like the bookends, you can turn them on and off. That is also an option. They're sort of recognizing that so many people use ElvUI and use all these other UI tools. I use Dominoes to be able to customize the UI. It's about time the game had something similar. So it's great to see. You can scale bars to have how many buttons you want on each row, so you can make them taller or wider as far as your bars for all of your buttons go. The one feature they need to add, and I wanted to add this in here because I hope Blizzard's listening, is a snap option. I really, really, really like it when you can make things snap to other things. If I'm taking an action bar and I'm placing it on top of another action bar, I don't want to have to fiddle with having to move it left and right by millimeters to try and make it line up perfectly with the one below it. Just have one snap to the other one and have them all. You can snap to center and snap to that's really nice to be able to do if those are features you can add. A lot of these add-ons have those, and they're super, super helpful. And yeah, the grid that I talked about, also super helpful. I always want a grid when I'm placing things on my screen, so I can evenly place things nicely and prettily the way I really want them to. So I appreciate that as well. Yeah, the UI is really nice. A new mini map. It's a whole new mini map. So if you're used to seeing that clock on your mini map, that's not there anymore. It threw me off entirely. I'm used to seeing that clock right there on my mini map. It's not there.
It's in the top right corner by default, but it's not attached to one big element, right?
Yeah.
You have a clock and the readout of the zone that you're in up in the top right corner, and you can open your map with that. But the new mini map is pretty slick. It's a lot more streamlined. It like the element itself doesn't take up as much screen space, but I think it's about the same size.
I think it's bigger,
even a little bigger.
Yeah, I think it's bigger for what you can see. Like its function is larger. Yeah,
yeah, and I think they must have reconfigured how the like zoom in zoom out works, because it seemed a lot smoother when I was messing with zooming my mini map in and out,
right?
Which is like a little thing. Well, it's not like a thing that's going to sell an expansion, right? But when you play the game all the time and you're fidgeting with your mini map all the time, it's just nice if it works better. So there's a lot of attention to detail even in the build that we were playing with the stuff that got touched up, and it makes a big difference. I think part of this too, this kind of feeds into the questing experience and the evoker class. Like a lot of stuff they've done with the new spell effects and combining that stuff with UI elements and overall UX design makes combat really even more readable than I think it has been of late. Some of the first of all, the bars just look better, so stuff kind of catches your eye more when it's casting, right? And they've also done some stuff with like ground effects, where I noticed a few mobs while I was questing that would have like a fear, right? And it is like an AoE fear, but it's only like a 4-yard range. So they would cast it and you'd see like the interruptible bar, but you'd also see a circle around their feet, which was where the fear was going to cast. And so now you have a bunch of different options to, visually to know like, okay, do I interrupt this? Do I fear immunity it? Do I just sidestep out of the fear circle? And a bunch of mobs out in the world, in various parts of these quests I was doing, had stuff like that, where there was more than one way to kind of read what was going to happen and like what was happening in combat. And I thought that was really cool. And a lot of the new targeting elements, like especially for, Evoker is the only thing I saw this on. But Evoker has all kinds of really dynamic, like, we're used to that one targeting circle, right? But Evokers have stuff that doesn't go in a circle, and they have stuff it's almost more like MOBA skill shots. And it's stuff that like, it's like a rectangle, or it's like a line that you shoot out in front of you or something, and you like aim that on the ground and then it happens. And I thought that looked really nice, and it felt pretty intuitive, and I thought it was just really readable. So all that stuff kind of, fed together to me. I feel like even at this stage, right, this early build, this first public build that's going out, like there seemed to be a pretty high degree of polish in terms of these elements of the experience, right? Like, obviously edit mode is not fully implemented yet, but the UI design is really strong. And the way these like non-game assets, if you will, like stuff that doesn't actually exist in the game world, like reads to the player, I think comes across really strongly. So I think it was, that was a pretty impressive part of the package to me. It's kind of subtle stuff. And like, if you haven't played in forever, or if you're like a new player, you wouldn't think anything of it. But when you've lived in this game as long as I have, and then you like log into this version of it where all this stuff has been like really like reimagined in a lot of ways, it's just like, it's pretty jarring, but I think it was, I don't know. As somebody who is kind of a stickler for the old school UI, like I'm ready to have this in the game now, like just to have the flexibility and have it look so clean. Like it's 2022, 1999 when they started putting the pieces together for this game was a long time ago.
Yeah, and so I guess I'll bounce off of the UI conversation a bit about professions, because the profession frame obviously has completely been updated as well, which still feels a little bit alpha. I think there's still a couple of touches that they're going to do to it, but it is looking very good. I did, there was alchemy and a couple other professions you could kind of experiment with right away, but nothing like, you couldn't craft a lot of gear other than trinkets. I could craft a ton of trinkets with alchemy. And I did skill up alchemy while I was there, just to sort of see how the system was working. Something I can confirm for people is how it works right now is as you skill up your profession at all. So if I'm using anything that's an orange skill up, right? So there's gray, green, and then orange kind of idea for how you actually get a skill up. Yellow than orange, how you actually get a skill up from stuff, your chance of getting one. As you skill up your profession in general, or as you craft orange things in general, because you're skilling up your profession, it does increase your levels of quality for everything that you make. So it's not something where you have to make 3,000 healing potions before you can make the best healing potion, right? Like, as far as the levels of quality go, you can make healing potions until that thing goes green, and then start making mana potions until that goes green, and then start, wow, 1 second. Whew, voice. All right. And then start making like trinkets or alchemy stones or whatever it is until that goes green. And as you do that, you will improve your healing potion overall the entire time, which I think is really good. I was worried at first that it would be something where, like, you basically wanted to just sit down and craft one thing a billion times to be able to actually get the top quality version of it. But no, all of everything you make in that profession gains quality benefit from crafting something that skills you up. So I was happy to see that. And overall, the UI element's pretty slick. So happy with that too.
Yeah, I mean, that's, to me, that's a big lesson learned from sort of what they try to do with professions in Shadowlands. We've beaten the horse to death many times, but the whole concept of collecting just an obscene amount of mats to then like spam craft a whole bunch of items that nobody wants and you can't do anything with, that didn't work out too well, and it seems like they are unhappy with that as well, and that is not the bent of how this profession rework is gonna play out for us.
Yeah.
It's way more about just like the overall identity of your toon as a crafter in your profession of choice, and then using the crafting order system to actually make stuff that maybe somebody might find useful and gaining skill that way. That all makes a lot more sense to me. So, obviously this is, we can't see the full scope of this stuff at this point. It's not like there were crafting orders or something in the alpha test, but you can already see the edges of it shaping up, right? And like, I think the potential for it is very strong compared to, we've heard this every expansion, like, we're revamping professions. It's a big focus for us. We want crafting to be impactful. And I don't really think they've hit that in recent expansions. And they also went, they went small with a lot of those revamps. It was like one particular element of crafting was important or whatever. This is kind of reimagining it from the ground up, and like what does it mean for the game and for your character and for the people that you play with, socialize with, cooperate with? Like, what how do you combine those together, and what does this mean for a whole group of players across all these different activities in the game? Not just like, well, you have to do this one activity to get this one thing to make this one item, but you need to do that or else your character's just not going to be competitive.
Yeah. Okay, so we already touched a little bit on Drakthir, so let's dig into that a little bit more. The class itself, its skill trees are sort of split into fire and, well, I don't want to say frost, but blue dragon. Red dragon, blue dragon is kind of how it's split inside the DPS build. I didn't play around with the healing build much because you couldn't do dungeons, and so there wasn't really a whole lot I could do with it to really test it out. So I'm going to leave that until we get a later stage of Alpha where there's actually a dungeon and I can actually dig in on the healing stuff. But as far as the DPS goes, you have your red and blue dragon side of your specialization tree. I chose to go down blue. I didn't play around with red too much. Red seemed to be a little bit more AoE based, whereas blue is a little bit more single target based. Although some of the spells adapt to be more of an AoE based spell. As Jason said, there are unique things that dragons do, as far as like a deep breath where they fly over an area breathing fire, which we saw inside the preview before for the class that they released. There's also like a frontal root that they can slam the ground in front of them and root things in front of them. And that's, again, an odd targeting shape. There's a
really cool visual effect, man. That was the one that really stood out to me. Like just really striking visual, and more roots are probably good in situations where you want stuff rooted. So yeah,
they have a root. They have a knock up in the air, which stuns people up into the air for a second, and they have a knock back, with a wing buffet that knocks everything back away from them. So you can knock things away from you and then root it in place away from you, and pound on it a bunch. And then you have an interrupt that you can cast, which you have a talent to reduce from 45 seconds to 20 seconds. So FYI, their baseline interrupt is 45 seconds long when you spec into it, which is a long interrupt, knowing that from a boomkin, which is a minute interrupt for boomies. But then if it gets too close to you, you can knock up in the air and interrupt it again with the knock up in the air. Will, obviously not silence them or actually interrupt the spell, but it disrupts the spell cast and makes them have to start casting again. So a lot of disruption that's involved in that. And then a lot of support for other players. They actually did put something into the game that when we first saw the Dragonflight reveal, I was like, I want them to do this. It is a ability that allows you to pick up an ally and carry them to a location. So you leap to an ally, you soar to an ally, pick them up, and then fly them to a place. Very cool. Really, really excited about that one, and seeing how much trolling can happen with that as you pick up your allies and move them around during fights without them knowing it. But
like a really dragon themed life grip type of idea, basically. But you're moving two of you around, that's kind of cool. It's similar, like you could see use cases for that, right? Like we have a similar ability in the game already, except it's sort of it's way more thematic for a Drakthir, and it presents some different gameplay opportunities too. So yeah, that's some of the stuff in there is really unique.
Yeah, as far as the rest of the support stuff goes, they have a baseline fire ability that either damages targets or heals allies. I almost immediately made a macro and put it on my bar that made me target myself, cast that on myself, and target my last target, and just use it as a heal all the time as a DPS, because when I'm out in the world questing, I'm not generally playing with other people. I'm going to be throwing an occasional 2-second cast heal on. So that was a really quick, smart way for me to basically just heal myself during combat if I pulled 5 or 6 mobs and was in trouble, kind of idea, which I liked. There's also a big healing circle you drop on the ground that heals you and other people standing in it, which is an instant cast. So that's another great, oh no, I'm in trouble, I'm just going to hit this button every now and then, and it sort of keeps my health up while I'm doing other things. And there's a dispel that they can get that dispels everything but magic off of a target, and it heals the target for a chunk of their health if it actually dispels something. But it's on a 1-minute cooldown or a 45-second cooldown or something like that. So it's a longer cooldown, but it will do a big dispel. They then have a smaller dispel that's on a lower cooldown that does I think just poisons and disease is all it sort of gets rid of, as opposed to getting rid of curses and stuff as well. But yeah, so that's the support package for them, which was kind of neat to play around with.
It's quite robust.
Yeah,
they have a lot of support options in addition to the other stuff that they're doing.
Yeah, and then as far as damage goes, it's an interesting class because it's a ranged class. 25 meters is its max range for its abilities. So it's not like Hunter and most range classes that are that 30 plus kind of range distance. They have to be that extra 5 yards closer. But a lot of their abilities are instant cast abilities. So you can be moving around a lot, tons of movement really easily. For the blue dragon tree that I was playing, you basically spammed a claw attack from a distance, which was really weird. So 25 meters away, you're spamming it and you're seeing swipe marks hit the target that you're attacking, which felt very strange to be doing because it does feel like a melee class. It feels like it should be, but it's not. It's just weird. And then that empowered a instant cast ability that hit really hard. And you also had a disintegration beam, which was a channel. And sort of you rotated that package a lot, and then you had things that enhanced that. And their whole casting package is based around energy orbs that regenerate over time, or that can be generated by using abilities. It's sort of think about combo points with a more like combo points with a druid, in the sense that you have to spend them to use an ability, except that they don't enhance the ability the more you spend, kind of idea, right? As opposed to building up combo point, I guess it's like holy power that way. But as opposed to building up combo points and then blowing something up once you get enough combo points, it's you have these 5 orbs you're regenerating, and something costs 3 of them and something costs 2 of them,
It's like a currency almost.
Yeah, it's like, it's like a currency.
I think Holy Power is. But I mean, in the limited time I spent, I think Holy Power is the closest.
That's the closest
analog we can think of, because some abilities generate and some abilities spend, and abilities generate or spend different amounts of them. So that's where it's a little bit different than Holy Power, kind of, because Holy Power you pretty much just generate, spend, generate, spend.
Right.
With this, it seems like it's a bit more flexible. I mean, I don't have like a broad perspective on it. I was just messing around with it a little bit, but it did seem like you had some different options. You know, you have abilities that empower other abilities, but you have, I forget what the resource is called, forgive me, but you know, you do have this kind of push-pull between how many resources are you generating? Essence, yeah. How much are you generating? How much are you spending? And, you know, in what sequence are you using things to empower other things? You get, you know, if you use this thing when it's empowered, then it procs this other ability to not cost your essence or whatever. So really dynamic. I mean, I think that was the impression that I got with like a relatively brief time on an Evoker was it was really dynamic. It was really mobile, and it seemed like a ranged and healer demon hunter, basically, right? Like, because you have that sort of it was almost like frenetic, but I guess it's maybe not as frenetic as demon hunter, but it has an ability to kind of reposition and you know, react to whatever's going on in the area around it.
Yeah, so mobility was the next thing I really wanted to touch on, because if you double jump, you do get the Demon Hunter soar around, float around thing, right? So you have that built-in slow fall. It also obviously lets you cross over certain distances that most classes can't, because you can jump and then hit the second jump to start gliding, which boosts you forward again slightly. So that's cool. It also has an ability called Soar, which basically leaps you forward, and then you float in the air and are able to... actually, no, it's not Soar. That's... I can't remember what that one's called, but there's one that leaps you forward, lets you float in the air, and increases your movement speed. And there's a talent to make the movement speed increase go up to 70%, which is crazy. I think it's baseline 30. And then...
Like, imagine if you could, like, heroic leap into the sky for a brief period of time. Like, you move and you stay there.
Soar. That's different. This ability is a leap forward, and then you move fast. So if you could charge a target and then get a movement speed boost, that's basically what this ability is. Soar is like heroic leaping into the sky, and you can then float around and float down, which is pretty cool.
And you can cast abilities while you're floating.
Yeah, while you're floating.
Like, which is, you know, that's sort of like a humanoid dragon. That's kind of what you would want them to be doing, right? So I think they nailed a lot of that stuff in terms of like, well, if you were this like humanoid dragon, this like hybrid type of, you know, humanoid, like how would you fight? Like, what would your fighting style be like? And I think they touched on a lot of that stuff so far.
Yeah, they did a really good job with the class as far as feel for me. The thing about Drakthir right off the bat that I did when I first logged into one is start just pressing buttons. And there's a lot of buttons that have 2-minute cooldowns. Like, so many of their abilities are 1 minute or 2 minute cooldowns, which I think is really unique for the class and really special for the class. But it does raise a concern for me, and that's around skill cap on this class. Because it is going to be a class where if you use these 2 minute and 1 minute cooldowns that, you know, make things free to cast, or always proc this thing, or always cause this thing to crit, or whatever it is, if you use them at sub-opportune times, you're not going to do as much damage as if you use them at more opportune times. And the more of those abilities that exist on a class, the larger the variance is in someone who's really good at playing that class and someone who's not very good at playing that class, right? And so I do worry a little bit that right now Drakthir are built more around someone who can figure out, looking at a fight, when the best time is to push one of their 4 buttons that they can push that have these longer cooldowns.
Yeah.
So
and it has a lot of situational abilities, I noticed, just like even in the baseline kit. So yeah, I mean, I think it's probably a good thing for the game to have like high skill cap play styles and you know, let players who enjoy that kind of thing be able to kind of distinguish themselves. I found it a bit intimidating to just like hop in there on a level 60 7 Drakthir Evoker.
Yeah.
I think it was. I played yours because I couldn't make more than one on the account that we were sharing. So
oh, sorry, I didn't realize that was the limit.
I didn't want to delete yours, and I was like, I just want to mess around with this, so I'll just play this. And I have no frame of reference for this class. Like, I don't know what it really does. The spell book is a mystery to me, and then we have 2 brand new talent trees that are very robust, and I'm just like, I'm just gonna push buttons for a little bit, then see how it goes. And it's really not the kind of thing that I see myself investing a lot of time in. It doesn't have a tank spec, for one thing. So like the main thing I like to do in the game is not a possibility on this class, but it's going to have a unique starting experience, right? So I definitely want to play through that. I'm definitely going to make one and level it up and stuff, but I don't think it's something I'm going to be playing in like an end game capacity. But I know people who are really excited about it and looking forward to it. I think it fills a couple really nice niches in the game overall. I mean, it's adding 2 specs that we need more, more diversity in, more different ways to play. It's adding a mail wearer. These are things that we need. These are the gaps to fill in the kind of class design picture. So it's cool. I think people that are excited about it are going to like what they see and like what they play when they get a chance to. And I think that's what that's the important thing. They weren't making this spec for me, or this class for me. And so the fact that I'm like not planning on really doing anything with it is not a surprise, but I liked it. I mean, I think the other thing I really want to highlight is that they put out they put out some social media stuff earlier this week that there were like 80 billion or 80 trillion different combinations of Drakthir customizations, and dude, they're so robust. You have so many different options for what your Drakthir looks like in either form, and they can be like totally independent of one another. It didn't seem like anything you did with one form affected anything on the other form.
They don't.
So, it was actually pretty impressive. I mean, when they first showed it, I think we talked about it either when we did the reveal co-stream or on the show afterwards. Like, I'm still not quite sold on them like looking like they belong in World of Warcraft. Like, the dragon form is a little generic for me compared to what we're used to.
The dragon form I agree with. The human form I think does look like it belongs in World of Warcraft. It does look good.
Yeah, it's if you ever wanted to be like a half elf, then the humanoid, the more like the human form. It's not really a human, but you know what I mean. Like the non-scaly dragon form of the Drakthir. You can kind of push it looks basically like a human, but you can get like the pointy ears and you can do some kind of, things that look a little bit more elven with some jewelry options and stuff. So I think people are really going to like that. I mean, everybody can make their own Drakthir form that doesn't look exactly like anybody else's, which is really cool. We've never seen that before.
They did a really good job in making them look very androgynous. They don't really have a gender that's assigned as far as like a specific that I've noticed, which I think was really good. In the
dragon form, like, you can just make it look like whatever you want. And I think the coolest thing is there's actually like 4 different body silhouettes, which we've never seen on any. Yeah,
you can have thicker ones or skinnier ones, or there's a bunch of them.
Yeah, because they're the ones that they showed off, like when you just kind of look at it, they looked a little skinny to me. I want to play like a one of those dragonkin type of characters. Something kind of bulkier, something that looks like it could really do some damage. And at the high end of like that scale, it's not like a massive difference. It's not gigantic compared to like the smaller options, but you could definitely tell the difference when you look at them side by side. So I don't know if that's the kind of stuff that works in any other context, but I still thought it was cool. Like I couldn't like run around with it in the game because of what I just said, but I did spend quite a bit of time in the character creation and just messing around with stuff and making like a Black Flight looking, Drakthir form, and it was really cool.
Yeah, so
I guess all this stuff's going to be barbershop, right? So you could just go mess with it and change it all up anytime you want to.
Yeah, that's what I'm super excited about. So, there's everything from like You know, right there's almost like tattoos and the scaling that you can put on your humanoid form. There's jewelry of like 5 different locations on your face that you can do jewelry, and like different types of different coloring. Everything has different coloring you can assign. There's different eyes, like they have different kinds of dragon eyes that you can assign. And like it's just like everything had customization options. It was really phenomenal from what I saw. Yeah, there's
I loved all the horn
super
options
fun,
and
tons
stuff,
of horn
man.
options and spike options. You want spikes coming out of your back or out of your arms. You want your tail to have a club
Or
on the end
fins.
of it, or to
Yeah.
have, you know, like what do you want your tail to look like? Like it's so cool the amount of stuff you can do with it.
You got to go either like spikes or fins or a combination of spikes and fins. That's kind of what I liked. You know, just you get like a big fin on the back, and then you get some spikes running down the arms and stuff. Just a ton of options. Like I couldn't even believe it. I think I spent maybe, I don't know, 20 minutes just trying to like edit out one character just to see what all was in store there. And it was awesome. One thing I really loved about it was that you had the like exact same options for horns and eyes, like the eye shape and eye color, and horn shape and horn color in both forms. So like you could keep that consistent if you wanted to, but you didn't have to. But I thought that was like a cool little nod to like, okay, you can make those the same. So those elements of your character persist regardless of which form you appear in. Yeah. I like that on like an RP kind of level. I thought that was neat. But if you don't want to do that, you don't have to. You can make either form look like whatever you want and have it totally transform if that's what you're into.
Go ahead. You're good.
I think like that's a great feature of it, especially because like so much of stuff you could just kind of turn totally off if you wanted to. Like you could really make your human form look basically just like a human, and that could be maybe part of your RP, right? Like you can't tell that they're a Drakthir until they transform into their dragon form, and stuff like that doesn't really have like a gameplay place. But I think it's something that's important to a lot of people, and it's a cool space that they maybe don't explore enough in WoW over the years.
Yeah, it helps a lot of people connect with their characters on another level, which I think is really neat. One of my favorite features was two-tone hair. You can do your hair as purple, and then you can have like a blue highlight in your hair if you want. So the whole almost like an underlay of your hair is a different color, and you can tie that between the dragon scales and whatnot. It's really, there's a lot of really fun customizations. I was very impressed with all the customization stuff.
Yeah. We just got that giant overhaul of customizations at the beginning of Shadowlands, and it's like, well, I want some of this kind of stuff on all the other races now too.
I'm gonna I'm gonna raise the complaint that has actually happened before, which is all of the Night Elf male faces look really angry, really upset and angry. Every single one.
Some really angry ones, yeah.
Well, no, like all of them. I went through trying to make my druid, and there was there are no happy male night elves. There's just none. They don't exist. You can't be a peaceful or joyful male night elf. You have to be angry or upset or depressed or grimacing in some way.
I think some are just sleepy, right? I mean, they spend a lot of time in the Emerald Chain,
did you make a male night elf on the alpha?
I mean, I have one on live.
Maybe all the faces are on alpha.
I don't think he looks angry. Well, they did have that problem with some of the faces, right? Maybe where some of them were missing or they weren't rendering right or something. So maybe they may have infected the alpha. Build.
Yeah,
I did make a male night elf druid, but I just clicked the randomize button so I could go play the game.
Right. Well, so speaking of old things carrying over into alpha, one of the characters which we know we meet up with, this was in all the announcement stuff out there, is Kalagos. Kalagos is back in the Dragonflight expansion, unsurprisingly. And
you don't say.
And the version of Kalagos that exists is the new model of Kalagos walking around, new human model walking around. But whenever you interact with him,
he looks super half elven. He looks great. He's got big pointy ears, and a total glow up for Kalagos. Finally, he finally looks in the game the way he's described in the fiction. Yeah,
but when you talk to Kalagos, he has all of his voice lines from Burning Crusade. He is fixated on killing and finding and defeating Kil'jaeden. He is fixated on doing it.
Alpha Kalagos is really mad at Kil'jaeden.
Really mad. Every time you click on him, it's Kil'jaeden. You're like, oh, okay, well, geez, Kil'jaeden again. Okay. So there's things like that, right? Where you're like, okay, this is alpha stuff. A lot of stuff is placeholder. That's an example of a placeholder. There's a lot of voice lines missing.
That's a fun one.
Right?
At least that's a fun one.
It's a nice nod to things. and so I want to talk about the world, because we haven't talked about how gorgeous this zone is that we get to explore, right? Like, it's like Grizzly Hills meets Borean Tundra. Like, it's just this really neat kind of, I would almost say northern, in my area, it's like Northern Ontario or like Northern British Columbia kind of area, where you have a lot of pine trees and a lot of growth with a lot of mountain escape and a lot of height and verticality to it, with a lot of color. And you have many biomes. There's like a volcano biome and a ice biome and something down by the sea, where all the Tuskar are, and there's an area that's very pretty and sort of like fall colors, leaves, pine forest, which I think is amazing. So yeah, it's a gorgeous zone. I'm always hats off to the arts team when they're designing the zone and stuff.
Yeah, I mean, they just they keep pushing the envelope with that every time out. It just gets better and better. The problem with Shadowlands was, for me, it was just so thematically out of left field that it didn't feel like it belonged. Now we're back on Azeroth. We are in familiar situations with familiar characters, familiar stakes, right? This zone that we were in, which was the Azure Span, which I guess is like, midway through the level up experience, or maybe a little bit towards the end. Borean Tundra, I think, is the number one thing I would compare it to. It's sort of a spiritual cousin to Borean Tundra in a lot of ways, because you do have, I guess it's Borean Tundra with a forest attached to it, right? Like, and also a little bit of Drustvar too. I found, because you had that glacier, like the side of Drustvar that's on like the other side of the Stormsong Valley Glacier. There's that area where you have the big glacier and the waterfalls, and like all the elementals are running around and stuff. It kind of got me on that level as well. But even in one zone, like, you do have all these subzones and all these POIs and all these levels that are built into it, that each one really feels different and serves a different part of the story and the experience. And it doesn't really feel like you're in one place doing one thing. They are pretty good at, not doing that usually. Although I do feel like in Shadowlands, like Bastion kind of felt samey all the way through, and as nice as Ardenweald was, most of that felt samey outside of the Drust kind of addled places. Maldraxxus, same thing. Revendreth at least had a little bit more variety, because you sort of had the outskirts of the castle, then you had the castle, then you had the barrens out in the western part of the zone. This zone that we were running around in has way more diversity in terms of like subzones and different kind of vibes than anything we saw in Shadowlands, and it feels just like bread and butter World of Warcraft, man. Like, it really does. It feels so much like Wrath of the Lich King, and I don't mean that in a bad way. Like, it evokes those same kind of things, right? You're in this place that, like, obviously there's a lot of ancient sort of power coursing through this place, right? And it's affecting the people that are there, and the other creatures that are there. And it's like it's exciting, but it's dangerous, right? It has that whole, like, the trees are like gigantic. There's these beautiful vistas as you kind of move around the zone, but it's not like a spooky forest. It's not like the Drustvar spooky forest, right? It's more to me, it's just like, it evokes that sense of adventure, and to me, that's so important in this game and in the spaces that we inhabit. I think there's all kinds of different ways to achieve that, and I don't have anything against spooky forest zones or anything, but it was just really a breath of fresh air to step into a new zone for the first time in 2 years and it be something like this,
As far as creatures go, that we have the giant frogs back. Everyone seems to like giant frogs.
Yeah,
they're back.
But they're like dragon-esque giant frogs.
They're dragon giant frogs. They're cool.
They have some kind of dragon DNA or something. Yeah. They look really cool.
There's like a dragon DNA version of deer that are walking around.
Yeah, there's all kinds of new deer and like just yellow creatures, stuff,
Yeah, they're all sort of dragon based. We have gnolls. Gnolls are back in this. You have to fight gnolls and quest around gnolls, which is something we have not seen in a very long time in World of Warcraft in a new zone.
And gnolls are again bread and butter, man. Like that. If you go back and read John Statz's book, the first character in World of Warcraft that nailed the art style and they built everything around was that original gnoll.
Yeah.
And so that is just World of Warcraft DNA through and through. And I think they did a great job with the remodel on those. They look really cool. They have some really cool props and armor and stuff that they wear. They make really great creepy noises.
Yes,
and,
they do.
They make like familiar ones, and they got some new noises in the toolkit. And that's just what you're supposed to be doing, man. It's World of Warcraft. You're supposed to be slaying gnolls in a forest. You know, I don't know. That's what this game is, I think.
Yep, we already talked about elementals. There's elementals all over the place with all sorts of different forms.
New VFX and new different shapes, like some new silhouettes you'll see there, and some really cool ideas. You know, like we've seen elemental remodels and reworks like every couple expansions this whole time, because elementals are sort of they're you can always use them for something, right? They're kind of a classic role-playing game enemy, and they get involved in a lot of stuff, but this is the first time in a while that they've introduced some new shapes, sizes, silhouettes of these types of things, and they look really cool. The new like rock elemental things that are like giant kind of oblong boulders walking around, like they're really cool. That's one of the coolest new things they put in a long time.
I definitely am a fan of the creatures in the zone that we've seen so far. You mentioned sounds, and I wanted to talk a little bit about soundscape in this place. You can hear these giant trees creaking. That's something that actually is in this. It actually freaked me out the first time it happened, because I was standing next to a tree looking at a talon tree. I kept hearing this like really eerie kind of large creak, and it took me a while to realize the trees are swaying, and when they hit a point of swaying, they actually creak and make sound with the amount of wind and whatnot that are pushing on them. And you're like, this is like, they're really going in depth on making this a soundscape.
Yeah. The ambience, I think, from what we played, was just on a completely different level than I've ever seen in this game before. Like, you'll just be standing around, you'll hear birds chirping and stuff if you're in the forest. It sounds weird to talk about, but those little details really up the ante on the immersion and feeling like this is, a sword and sorcery fantasy adventure role-playing game. Like, when you get a chance to play this, play it on headphones and turn up the sounds, man, and just drink it in for a little bit when you get a chance to, because they're like, to me, from what I played, there was an obvious focus on upping the sound design around the game in general. And a lot of it was through the ambience and through the creature sounds. And it came through really strong for me. When I first logged in, I was just like, wait, what is that? Wait, there's just birds chirping. Like it's funny how it doesn't sound like a big deal, but when you put all these pieces together, right? The way that this zone is designed, the way that all the subzones and levels inside the zone work, and then, the graphics are so nice. Like, it looks like WoW. WoW has its limitations, certainly, but they're doing some really great stuff with the game visually, and then you add the audio layer in the background, and like it really just presents a compelling package. Like, I cannot wait to just live in these spaces for a couple years.
Yeah, I'm certainly looking forward to it. It's going to be very, very cool. Okay, we cannot leave this without talking about.
I want to stick on the visuals and the inhabitants of the zone really quick, because did you see the glow up mountain giant? There's a new mountain giant, new frost giant. They look great.
Oh, I don't think I did see the new mountain giant.
Yeah, it's that traditional like Warcraft 3 Sammy design, with like the big brow that looks kind of like the thing, sort of. I saw one of those guys stomping around in super high poly and high res.
Nice.
The new Tuskar models are gorgeous. Like absolutely gorgeous, super high poly. Like, look, when you get up close and you look at like a Tuskar or a Gnoll even, it's like, dude, it's been 8 years since the last player character model rework. Dude,
please?
The Tuskar look better than any of the player races. Granted, they don't need to do as much, but It's been a long time. Like maybe it's time to get player character model revamp on the radar. So, like, it sounds weird to say that because it feels like it wasn't that long ago, but that was 2014.
Yeah,
that was 10 years on. We're now 8 years on from that.
Yeah.
So, maybe next time out. I don't know.
Yeah, I would like to see another revamp. It would be really cool. Maybe they're upping the Tuskar model because it's going to be a playable race at some point in the future. Who knows?
There you go.
That might be what they're doing.
I still think the models in the game hold up. Like
they do.
That's how WoW benefits from the choice to be so stylized from an art standpoint, and it's what keeps it looking nice so far on. And I think, the revamp they did back in 2014 still looks good. But when you see what they're doing with character kits like they've done for this expansion, it's like, dude, maybe it's time for another pass at these because, the tech has just taken that other leap forward.
Yeah, so I'll mention two things about Tuskar. The first is the Tuskar sea turtle boat also got a glow up. I don't know if you saw it down there.
Mm-hmm, I did.
It is phenomenal looking. It's so cool looking.
It's so detailed. Like there's so many like little bits and bobs and props hanging off of it and stuff, and everything's like moving and has physics, and it's really cool looking.
It's very, very cool. And the other thing is, and I mentioned this to you when I was playing the game, is I go, I don't know if it's going to bother anyone else, but for some reason it really bothers me that the Tuskar voice actors don't sound like they're talking with tusks in their mouth at all. Like they speak like normal people speaking, like the way we are talking right now, as opposed to having some sort of like, I'm talking with something in my mouth kind of voice acting. And I don't know how I feel about that.
Maybe they have like psychic powers or something and they're just communicating with you telepathically.
It's like the Tortolian. The Tortolian had like an older kind of gruff,
Yeah.
But
the other thing is in the one Tuskar town you get to, like the guards out front are riding giant otters.
Yep.
And
Otter mount's a thing.
That better be a purchasable rep reward because I suddenly have a mighty need to ride around on a giant otter. They look great. Like what a cool addition to the Tuskar as a concept, and they pulled it off. Like they look so cool in the game. They don't look like anything else. So just man, like I spent a lot of time just kind of wandering around looking at stuff, like zooming in my camera and looking at models and looking at different like props and the way stuff was set up in towns and buildings and the way light sources would be going up a spiral staircase or something. Just all those little details, man. It pops so much. It looks like it. I think the biggest thing really with the visuals is just coming back to what World of Warcraft looks like in your brain, like in your memories of like what Warcraft is. We could go on about Shadowlands and what it is and what it isn't, but it's certainly not, what I just described in terms of like your sort of sense memory of Warcraft. Yeah. And we spent a few months now in Robot Heaven, and it's cool and I like it for what it is, but I mean, this is what puts butts in seats when it comes to Warcraft. This is what people want. This is what I think you and I want. It's like this traditional, this is the high fantasy sword and sorcery thing. This is what we like about the world of the game. And this is Dragonflight from what we were able to play. It's that stuff, but on a level that I don't think we've ever seen in the actual game before.
Yeah, it's everything in Shadowlands feels alien in comparison to playing what we played in the alpha. Like it just does feel alien. Like even as much as when I was rolling around as the Night Fae inside Ardenweald, I was like, yeah, this is like sort of similar. Like kind of like, no, actually it's legit not. Like going back and running through this zone and running through, you're right. It does remind me a lot of some of the BFA zones as well. Like it grounds it in Azeroth. Like immediately you're like, I am in Azeroth versus any of the zones that you run around with in Shadowlands, which is a success for them because they were trying to make an alien world and alien habitats that didn't look like anything that we'd seen before. So success for the team in creating that. But it is an alien thing, and I am really glad to be back in Azeroth. Okay.
Yeah, like when you watch people streaming this today, or tomorrow, whenever you're listening to this, whenever people are streaming the alpha, like you're gonna know where they're supposed to be when you see this happening, because there's no mistaking it, man. Like Azeroth just has that. It has that quality. Like I can't enunciate it. I can't put it into words. But there's something about it that is tangible, and what we saw, I think, captures it at a very high level.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, I want to get to dragon riding. I want to talk about dragon riding because it's a thing and it's complicated and people need to know how to do it.
And I'll tell you what, I before you go deep into it, I just want to say it was something that I didn't really have much consideration for based on the preview, but once I got to mess around with it, like the potential became obvious immediately. I think it's actually a really cool feature for this expansion.
So first and foremost, there's going to be when we logged into alpha, there were 2 different mounts that you could actually ride, and there was a third mount you could unlock from questing. All of these mounts share the same system, meaning you can't go, I've tired out this dragon, let me get on my other one, which I kind of wish you could, because it would be kind of neat if that was an option.
Like a stable of
dragons.
You know, like, what do dragons eat? I don't know, when you stable them, you give them like an oat bag or something. I don't know.
It's probably meat, man. I expect they probably eat meat.
You give them one of those dragon cattle that are running around in
back at one of the bases, they just have an area where they lure a cow into a raptor's pen, only it's dragons.
Oh, yeah. It's like Jurassic Park. Yeah,
exactly.
It's one of those weird frogs.
Exactly. It's a dragon frog being lured into a raptor pen. Perfect. Yes, I hope that creates some imagery for people.
Yeah.
Anyways, so they all share it. So really what you're looking for when you're riding your whatever dragon you want to ride is the aesthetic you want to go for. Through doing questing and doing activities in the game, you do unlock armor and different appearances for them, as far as like armor you can add on and different gear you can add on to them to sort of change their appearance to a certain degree. And we unlocked a ton of that just by questing in this zone. So you were able to play around with that a little bit. But the mechanics of actually dragon riding, my initial first impression, people are really going to dislike this, which was my number one concern that I had when they first announced that it was going to be a thing. That was my initial impression, was like, hey, people aren't going to like this at all. It's active flying. It's flying where people have to pay attention to what they are doing all of the time. Otherwise, they will be unsuccessful in what they are attempting to do. And a lot of people like getting on a flying mount, pointing in a direction, watching a movie, and then going back to arriving at their location. That's what a lot of people like to do. And I had to remind myself, early in every expansion, we don't have flying. So if this
is not a replacement for traditional flying. This is a bonus, essentially.
We're going to have traditional flying later in this expansion. This is a bonus, which honestly, after playing around with dragon riding for a while, I don't know how much I'll use traditional flying over dragon riding. I'm just putting that out there now.
I kind of had the same feeling. Like, I was just like, yeah, whatever. This will be fine. I guess I'll collect stuff for my dragon. Like, I don't get it. But as soon as I started playing around with it in a context where I was trying to do quests and stuff, where I couldn't fly, like I really saw the potential. And then once I started doing it a little bit more, I was like, you can actually do some pretty cool stuff with this.
Very cool stuff. So your dragons have different abilities. They have the ability to go up and go forward when you first sort of get them inside the alpha. And they have 3 energy. And that means that you can go up or forward 3 times in a total. So going forward costs 1 energy, going up costs 1 energy. And so whatever you're wanting to do, you just have to sort of plan out how you're going to do it. The biggest thing to remember is they're designing the zones for this expansion with dragon riding in mind, meaning that there are areas of each of these zones that are really elevated and really low, so that you can actually go from one end of the zone to the other in a very timely fashion using dragon riding, doing some really cool active stuff, because you might have started on the high end of the zone and gone to the low end of the zone. Conversely, obviously later on, once you've unlocked more stuff for your dragon, I think you'll be able to actually get from the low end reasonably quickly to the high end, but not all inside one big fell swoop. One of the quest chains actually ends with a very cool, you can fly from one end of the zone to the other because you're so high up in the zone. It's just a really neat experience to do. So the flying mechanics themselves is momentum based, and it's something they talked about in the reveal, that there's going to be a really momentum based experience, and they're excited about it. And what they mean by that is when you start traveling at speed, you're going to start to be able to see wind lines sort of appearing around your dragon. And that means that you're traveling like 80% speed, right? And you're like, all right, well, if I can get to 100, if you can get up to 100% speed, you start getting these actually like glowing parts appearing on your dragon, and this really neat sound effect starting to happen. and a neat thing starts to happen. You start generating energy again while you're flying. And so one of the things they point out very early on in your dragon riding is the only way to gain energy back on your dragon to refill those 3 abilities that you can use is to land and let your dragon rest, in the sense that you can ride around on it, but as long as you're not flying on it, it's gaining back energy. If it's in your bags, it's gaining back energy. As long as you're not flying on it, it's gaining energy. What they didn't tell me in any of that stuff is when you get up to speed, your energy starts coming back again, which now there's a way to like gamify the whole thing to another level, right? You launch yourself up into the air, a second time, so you're nice and high up in the air, and you angle your character so that you're slightly on a downward slope, right? And you start picking up speed. And then you start picking up enough speed, you start generating more energy. Now you have 1 energy left that you've already, saved up. As this bar starts filling back up again, you can use that 1 energy to go up again, which then, obviously, you've now spent that. You have 0 energy left, but you're gaining energy because you're still moving really quickly, and you'll start earning back more opportunities to fly up again. And so what you end up doing is being able to travel from, like, I'm trying to think of like a really good comparable, like the top of Stranglethorn Vale to the bottom of Stranglethorn Vale in one flight, just because of being able to manage this system. And you do it at like 600% speed, like twice mount speed. It's really fast. And so you actually start to have this like exciting moment. You really, like, I really did feel excited when I started to get up to that speed. Like, oh, I'm doing it. This is actually working. This is going well. Like I'm actually pulling off what I'm trying to pull off with this system. And it's being successful, and this is how I think it's supposed to work. And then you end up running at a speed over top of water, and you're kind of like swimming around trying to, figure out how to rest your dude, and you're stuck, and you have to hearth back to the base because you screwed up your flight. But, you have those moments of excitement, which I think is really cool. And so I'm anxious to see whether, and I assume there are ways to increase the amount of energy that you have on your dragons. You can have like up to 5 charges at some point, I would hope. The abilities, you unlock another ability. You unlock a barrel roll ability, which allows you to lunge forward at really high speed. So you unlock an ability when you're doing this sort of quest chain that you're doing. So that's cool. So maybe they have even more abilities that you can unlock. Maybe there's ways to do damage while you're on your dragon if you slam into things. Whenever you land, it makes this like impressive slamming down, crashing down landing sound. When you when you land on the ground. So it'd be neat to have something where you land and do damage to things. That would be kind of a neat feature for this whole deal. So I'm excited for where this can go. What was really neat to me was me going from a place of, I don't think people are going to like this very much, to, you know what? For those who want to put just a little bit of effort into this system, they're going to have a lot of fun with the system. And you're really going to be able to, at least for the first little while before, actual flying unlocks, have players actively flying around the zone. And you're going to see all these dragons soaring through the sky, doing all this cool stuff on a regular basis. Like, picture what this, like, we were on a media server that had like maybe 8 people online at any given time, right? Like, that was like where we were kind of at. Picture what this is going to be like during the launch window, right? For the first 2 weeks, you're going to have like 80 dragons in the sky flying around doing barrel rolls and stuff all over the place, right? It's going to be crazy to see. So I'm pumped for that.
Yeah, we didn't get to do I assume there's some kind of tutorial experience. We didn't get that. We got like a 1-pager with like how to do dragon riding, and then we log in and just get our dragons.
Yeah.
So I assume there'll be a thing that's a bit more cinematic in a way, and probably a bit more informative inside the actual game. In the reveal, I was like, well, the dragons are cool, I guess, but this seems like a kind of a throwaway. Like, whatever, it's fine. But yeah, it is actually really fun. The cool thing is, I guess, like, you can totally ignore this if you don't want to deal with it. Like, you don't have to do it, but
you can stick on a ground mat all you want. Yep.
It's a cool thing that you can do, like, in the game world. It doesn't really affect anything in terms of like combat efficiency or anything. You don't have to like grind up your dragon riding so that you can do Mythic Plus, right? Like, it's just a way to get around in the outdoor world, and it's another vector for collection and kind of personalizing your character and their stuff and the way things look to you and around you in the game. and the dragons look amazing. Like we're just talking about the the new creatures and the new humanoids and stuff. Like these dragon riding dragons are just on a completely different level of fidelity from other mounts we've seen. Dude, like I don't know if you noticed really, because you do have to pay attention to what you're doing when you're dragon riding because of gravity. But like the wings flapping in the breeze when you're up in the sky, and like they just look they look phenomenal, like just unreal for what we're used to flying around on in this game. Not to say that that modern mounts look bad, but when you think about the whole history of like what wings have looked like in World of Warcraft, right? Like the new, like the dragon riding dragons, I don't know what to call them really, but they look incredible. And yeah, you're unlocking, I mean, even in the quest we were doing, we're unlocking customization options all over the place, so you can really make your dragon look the way that you want it to, or at least like among all the choices you're presented with, right? You get a ton of options. And I mean, having it for level up is great. Like I was using it just to bypass stuff I didn't want to deal with and like get to a quest target or a quest giver, go turn a quest in, or like, oh, I finished this. Let me just hop on this dragon and shoot up into the sky and get the hell out of here. Like that is stuff that you're not usually able to do.
Yeah.
Like not only does it present, like you mentioned about the way the zone is designed, and like you have these POIs that are vertical and you fly up there, you dragon ride up there and then do a thing. But also, like the other side of that is it presents these opportunities in gameplay in like a more just kind of organic way. Like, oh, I want to get to that place over there to do this quest, but I don't want to go in a straight line from point A to point B. I'm just going to hop over there, and then I can go talk to this quest guy, and then I'll do the quests around him without having to, run in a straight line to him. Stuff like that. It just opens up the experience a lot more, and it's kind of a nice happy medium between, okay, you can't fly at all, or nothing on the ground matters, right? Yeah. And that's kind of where they've ended up since 2007.
Yeah,
it's like, well, once you can fly, nothing on the ground matters because you just fly in between everything. Like I think this is going to present a lot of interesting opportunities as we level up. I mean, really, this is a thing that I had no consideration for coming into this alpha preview. I figured, yeah, whatever, like it's fine. But I think it has a lot of potential. It's a cool feature. I think people are going to have fun with it. The thing it really plays like it to a large degree is the Batman Arkham games.
Yeah,
like you can glide and you like pick up momentum as you kind of descend, and then like crest and ride that momentum back up into the air. And I actually DC'd myself from the preview server quite a few times because I was going too fast or whatever.
I was going to mention that. That's an issue that also exists with Soar for the Drakthir. The Drakthir's Soar ability, where they leap in the air, has the same ability to build up momentum and swoop around. And I was doing it in Stormwind. I was flying through in the trade district all the different like little tunnels and then swooping back up into the air, and it was really cool. And as I went through one tunnel, it DC'd me because it's like, you're going too fast and you're clipping stuff. We don't like it. Like, there might be some tech issues as this stuff gets off the ground, because you could go like way faster than you're usually able to. So there might be some tech restrictions they gotta. If it encourages them to actually fix that problem, I am on board, because that is a problem that has existed for a very long time.
I mean, I think a problem is one way to put it. It's a safeguard, right? Like it's really what it is. It's there for a reason. But yeah, they probably need to
adjust
figure
its
that
sensitivity.
out. Like,
yes,
you are gonna, because you're gonna go fast on these things, and you're gonna do stuff that you wouldn't be able to do under other circumstances. Momentum and gravity don't exist in the game in any other context, really. So, I mean, I guess you could fall off stuff, of course, but you're either falling or not falling in that context, right? Like you don't. There's no way to like dynamically react to that. Unless you're immune to floor. So yeah, this was actually a big surprise to me, like how much I liked it and how much potential we have here, like just to have fun with it. It doesn't matter, right? You're not going to like log in on Tuesday reset because you got to grind up your dragon riding, right? You got to fill up the bar for the week. Like it's just there, and you can do it, and it's cool, and you can pick out, you can collect and put different stuff on your dragon and make it look cool. And I think that's an important thing to have in a game like this. Like people want stuff to do that isn't like do really difficult content for very gradual numerical upgrades.
I'm already really excited about what mounts, what different dragon riding mounts will come from different chunks of content, right? Like what,
Yeah.
like if the, I mean, obviously they're still going to have traditional mounts, but I mean, for season 1 in this, you might as well make like the, you know, Hall of Fame, or not the Hall of, the cutting edge and the AOTC mounts be dragon riding mounts. You might as well have the, you know, Mythic
I
Plus
hope so.
hero be, you know, dragon riding mounts, and just be really cool thematic dragon riding mounts. Like I just, you know, I want them. I want them. They're just so cool.
Yeah, I mean, once
They,
you mess
you
around
know,
with the system just a little bit, like the possibilities just start like cascading in your mind. You know, like all the different stuff you can do with them in the gameplay space and the collection space and all that. Like,
yeah.
it is a really cool addition. Is it going to massively impact your experience with Dragonflight? No, it's really not. Like, it's not going. It's not like the core gameplay that you're going to engage in. But is it going to be fun? I feel pretty confident in saying it's going to be fun based on what I played. As long as they can let you do it without, you know, disconnecting yourself from the server.
Yeah. The two other things I want to mention about Dragon Ride. One was there is an updraft that exists inside of the alpha zone that we're in, where if you are low to the ground and you happen to fly over it, it pushes you back up into the air, which is something that I'm super pumped about, because it means that for when you have verticality inside of a zone, I imagine we'll be able to learn where all of the updraft things are on our sort of regular daily loop, and we can actually fly around the zone from low ground to high ground, which I think would be kind of cool. So I like that gamification of it as well. And then actually two more things. The second one is right now dragon riding is only available in Dragon Isles. You can't go to Stormwind and do dragon riding.
Right.
It's not a thing. I am hoping that if it's successful enough during this expansion, they go, yep, we're going to just include it everywhere. I imagine it's not super crazy difficult to enable that feature in the rest of Azeroth and in other content. But hopefully it isn't that hard to do. Because it would be unfortunate if these are mounts that you essentially can only use in Dragon Isles, and then we leave that expansion and you just never get to use these mounts or that cool feature again. I think would be a very unfortunate thing.
I mean, maybe they could kind of reconfigure them so they just like fly normally elsewhere. But I don't know. I mean, that could be a tough one because if you have like so many variables in the old content with the geometry and stuff and the way everything's laid out. But like, I don't know. I mean, a lot of what it seems like is happening in Dragonflight is, you know, stripping away these layers down to like what is cool about World of Warcraft. You know, what the character that you're playing, what's important about it. And that's kind of how I see the talent rework is just investing that power into your character's identity from a class and a spec standpoint. And also the profession rework, I think, is a big part of that. You know, a lot of what we talked about with Morgan earlier today was about professions as kind of this actual, you know, pillar alongside other stuff like raids, dungeons, PvP, of like an activity that you're engaging in. You know, we sort of talked about the end game loop. You know, what I'm at max level. It's not a raid night. It's not my dungeon buddies are not online. I want to play some WoW though. I log in. What do I do? And you know, professions was one of the things that he highlighted as like, you know, this is a deep and broad system that, you know, you may want to engage in and get significant rewards. I think it would be really cool for something like WoW and in the Warcraft fiction where like the dragons are so intrinsic to like our character's home planet or adopted home planet, depending on what type of character you're playing, right? Like the dragons are sort of the protectors of the realm, like in a very literal way. And our characters have a deep connection to them. Like, I wouldn't be sad if part of your character's identity going forward was like, yeah, you have these mounts that you kind of collect and then you collect stuff for them and you can do stuff to make them look different. And then you can, you know, fly them around. And even if they weren't all dragons, I mean, I feel like there's something there. Like collecting stuff in this game is really fun, I think. And it's something that has paid dividends for the game since Cataclysm when Transmog came in, and then over the years this stuff has improved with, you know, getting the collections UI and everything. I think adding a whole new vector like this to collect stuff along is potentially really cool. I mean, maybe 2 years from now we sit here and go, you know what, dragon riding, it was fun for 20 minutes, but then it got lame and I didn't really like any of the stuff I collected, and I yeah, I don't want any more of it, but I don't know if getting different looking armor and putting that on my character is cool. I feel like getting different stuff to put on my dragon would be cool too.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. I'm just pumped for the whole system. I think it's gonna be really fun. The third thing I wanted to mention was because your bar is replaced when you get on a dragon riding mount with like a vehicle bar for buttons for controlling your dragon riding mount. It means people who are used to like having a Moonfire or, you know, Charge or whatever it is ability that aggroes a mob really quickly. There's going to be some relearning of habits because you don't have that bar. You have the dragon riding bar. So it's either going to be macros created to sort of find a way to dismount quickly and tag something. I know I often do that as far as trying to find a way to dismount quickly and tag something. But that's going to be an experience for some people learning some things. And
I kind of struggled with that. I'm hoping we get some auto dismount options or something as, you know, actual release takes place.
Or
it's a little weird. Like you're sitting there on the ground on a dragon, but like
you can't hit anything. Yeah,
you can't like use your abilities, or like you can't shift into like travel form, for example. There's some other stuff that, like, if you were mounted, you'd be able to interact with it, thus dismounting you and doing the next thing you wanted to do. Like, that doesn't work currently. You have to manually dismount like it's vanilla. So yeah, I don't know if that's just the reality of this build that we're playing. I hope that's not like the design intent, because it's not smooth. It's a little clunky compared to what we're used to.
You have to press your button that you press that has the mount on it to dismount. And then that's your way of getting off your mount and being able to start doing things again. No. So, yeah, I would like when you land auto dismount option would just be really neat. I think
that'd be great,
it's super helpful. So just basically when you land, it just takes you off your mount right away. Would be kind of a neat thing. I also understand people don't want that. So maybe a button that you can press when you're riding on the dragon that literally means when you hit the ground, it's going to take you off your mount would be kind of a neat feature to have. So I don't know. I feel like they could do more with that to make that a smooth experience, and I'd be excited to see that. When you're a Drakthir, I wanted to mention this. You cannot get on mounts as a dragon. It will auto change you out of a dragon into your person form, your non-dragon form, whenever you get on your mounts. So you do not dragon ride as a dragon on a dragon. It's not a thing. To be clear.
Yet, I mean, hopefully they'll fix that someday. But I mean, it just kind of makes sense. I mean,
it does.
When you look at like the Drakthir's skeleton in its dragonid form, like
Did you look at the Drakthir skeleton? Did you die at all when you were doing this?
No, I didn't.
I
saw there are some around the zone though, right, or something. I saw some that like look like the literal skeleton. Maybe it was players that I don't know.
Probably players who died.
I didn't play it long enough to enter a situation where I'd be in some kind of peril and then would die and then see my skeleton. I'm not saying that I'm like pro or anything.
He's amazing at the game. I died at least 3 times.
I'm sure I would have died had I played more, but I didn't play enough to die. But I did see some skeletons around, and they're pretty gnarly looking.
Dude, there's a bug on alpha right now, and I'm sure there's gonna be tons of screenshots coming out with it. It's basically the dragon skeleton with its wings clapped back together, heads facing up towards the sky, mouth open, arms outstretched. Like it's a hilarious pose.
It's great.
That currently, when your Drakthir dies, your skeleton strikes. It's hilarious.
Leave it in there, please. Yeah. Don't ever fix that.
It's perfect.
But no, what I'm saying is not like they're actual bones, but like the rig that the model is built on.
Yes.
It doesn't really lend itself to like sitting on a mountain riding around. It's just it wouldn't look right. So yeah, it probably makes sense.
Yeah. So overall, I guess just to sum this all up, super excited about it. Looking really good. Very promising. Lots of things I like about it. Still very broken, but we'll see how, it's alpha, and alpha is going to get better as it goes.
First public build,
I think the number one thing for players, the biggest concern for me for players is the intimidation factor of the new talent system. We have been so used to having the limited amount of choices that we have that I think a lot of players are going to log into the game when the talent system rolls over or when they're looking at alpha or whatever it is and go, holy man, what do I do? And feel like they need to take an hour to sort of go through their talent trees and pick things. Fortunately, one of the things that we talked about with Terran, which I think is with Morgan, that I think is going to be super, super, super helpful, is the ability to share builds. So I think what's going to end up happening is you're going to have a lot of people out there sharing builds for players, and new players are going to be able to basically just do a copy and paste and go, okay, I'm in and I'm playing and this works, and I can fool around with talents later, so I don't feel like I want to just hop into doing this content and I have to basically take a whole bunch of setup time to go through this. Because the talent trees as they exist right now are basically all of the systems that were spread out across Shadowlands compressed together into one system. Like, that's literally what they did, is they took all the legendaries and conduits and soul binds, and like they basically took all of those and mash them into one system, which is talent trees, with your class, obviously, and all your class talents in there as well. So there's a lot in there. It's an expansive thing. It's very flexible. There's a lot you can do with it. The reassuring thing for me is that templates are going to be a thing that are available for players, where they can copy and paste what, you know, Wowhead recommends, or Icy Vein, or whoever's putting something together can recommend, or their favorite streamer, and just go with a default build and not have to think too much about it right away, and can choose to get into it when they want to. And this system is so flexible. There is literally a reset button you can just press. There's, you know, presets you can save. So it's so flexible for you to be able to just play around the way you want to play around with it. So there's nothing punishing about it. There's nothing in the system that exists as far as when you're making decisions that will feel like, oh no, if I do this, there's no going back. Like, it literally has an undo button. So don't be afraid of that. You do still need to be in a rested zone to actually change and accept builds, though. So keep that in mind too. Don't go, and in this case, a lot of people logged into the alpha experience and then immediately talked to the person who teleported them to the zone inside Dragonflight, and then were not able to actually do any talents or specking or anything because they'd already gone to the zone in Dragonflight. So that's not recommended. Be sure you actually take time to choose your talents before you go off and do stuff. So yeah, that's my biggest concern right now, is just for the average player, this feeling like an overwhelming system. And I want to reassure you that they're looking at ways to make this less impactful on you if you just want to play the game and not think too much about talents and choices like that.
Yeah, I mean, it is a lot. It's a bit daunting, even for me. I mean, like, you know, like I said, I made a warrior and it was the old data, and so I wasn't going to play that. But I'm not really intimately familiar with Guardian Druid. You know, it's something I mess around with, but it's not where I live. And so, you know, I know my way around the class and the spec to some degree, but it's so much stuff to go through. And like, I don't really know what I'm looking for. Like, I don't know what I want out of my Guardian Druid, right? Like, I feel like on my warrior, I know what I want, and that kind of, I feel like would help inform what I'm choosing a bit more. Whereas, you know, it's like, here, welcome to the alpha test, spend 51 talent points.
Yeah.
And then go forth. And it's just, you know, it's a lot. I mean, of course, you know, on live, I mean, we're going to have pre-patch. Pre-patch is going to be probably a month or so, you know, or whatever, 2-3 weeks at least. And you'll have time to kind of...
There'll be PTR before that, yeah.
Yeah, like you'll have an opportunity to check the stuff out before it goes live if you want to. If you don't want to, there won't be like new stuff to actually do in the game when it first comes out. So, you know, you'll be able to experiment with it a bit. And I mean, I think the cool thing is it seems like it's so flexible, you know, as compared to something like the Conduit, you know, system and Covenants, just everything in that realm. Or
there's a lot of this or that choice inside those systems. Whereas in this case, it's those systems all piled into one. So you have like a 5 wide or a 6 wide decision tree that you're working your way down, which is a lot different. Yeah.
Yeah, and but the good thing is, like, it's only tied to leveling up your character. So as stuff changes, as metas shift, as different things get figured out, as tuning occurs, you're not going to be stuck where you're heavily invested down some kind of path that you can't flex back from when it comes to this stuff, right? And
yeah,
I think that's something we haven't really seen very much of in the last few years. So that's a big benefit. I mean, we want to see this stuff change and evolve and, you know, tweak stuff and try different things out, because you're going to level up your character no matter what, right? So you're going to get your talent points, and you're going to be able to allocate them however makes sense for your play style and what you're doing.
Yeah. Yeah, it's important just to recognize that we're coming from an expansion where everything was initially designed as very rigid and very, this choice matters to you, into an expansion where they're almost overcompensating in the other direction of going, we're giving you a ton of choice and you can remake all those choices as many times as you want, and we want players to have a lot of flexibility. So they're trying to they're doing the classic Blizzard thing of overcorrecting, but it could be an overcorrection that turns out to be a really good thing. So we have to sort of wait and see as stuff develops and unfolds. I know there's a lot of work to be done on the talent trees that they're still working their way through. So I'm sure there'll be a lot of other tons of content creators getting out there and going, all their opinions on immediate feel. I know right now there's already people who are posting review upon review upon review of the current talent trees as they exist and what they think of them, which is good because they're giving feedback. But anyone who takes to heart that this is how things are going to be is wrong. It is all going to change.
I'm sure the class designers have not been like crossing their fingers for the last 2 days going,
did I nail it the first time?
Yeah, like
first time out of the gate. Yes.
Yeah, they just know that's not, it's a starting point. I mean, like, WoW is a very long assembly line, and the stuff that takes very long to build is the world itself, the stuff that inhabits it, the stuff that we do inside of it. Once that's stood up, it's a bit faster to do things like flex on, spells and numbers and stuff like that. So, I think it's interesting where we're at with this testing phase, because signs point to this being shorter than we've seen for recent expansions, right, in terms of an alpha beta cycle, if what they're saying comes true and stays on track. When we first played Shadowlands, which was, at an announce, and so it was much earlier in the process, like there was no new data. Like the BlizzCon demo for Shadowlands was, you played some questing in Bastion, but no matter what you played, it was all the data from 8.2. Everything about your character was exactly the same as that, and you just ran around in the new zone and did some new quests. That was a whole weird roller coaster through that testing process. I would imagine that we'll see the rest of the class and spec talent trees stood up, pretty early in the process. I will say, I didn't run into a whole lot of stuff in Azure Span with stuff just not working, quests not triggering and firing and stuff not happening and, missing textures. And I mean, we've seen that in initial tests for a lot of stuff over the years where it's like, oh yeah, there's supposed to be a building here, but it's just like a blue and white cube.
Yeah.
And nothing like that. And even though this is granted, we're farther along in the process, but in terms of the content, the stuff that you're doing inside the game, it felt a lot more like a WoW product that you would have you play at retail, right? Not finished necessarily, obviously. There's a lot of stuff that would just straight up tell you it wasn't implemented. You couldn't collect the item to turn the quest in or whatever. Some placeholders on some of the stuff you would pick up, but overall, stuff seemed to work. It seemed to behave the way you would expect it to. I think that stuff is probably pretty hard to nail down. So I'm really excited, man. I think the preview that we got to play was really impressive. It really paid off on the stuff that I'm excited for about this expansion. And there were some cool surprises, some stuff that I didn't think would really hit it for me. I enjoyed it more than I thought I would.
Yeah, I will reiterate, there's still a lot of things that are broken about this, and it's still very broken to me, but I also believe that they are far enough along that they're going to hit their date of this year, so, that's a good sign.
Yeah,
right?
I mean...
There's nothing that can't be fixed in the next 6 months, so that's great.
If we're in the zone and, there was just, a cliff and then there was nothing there,
Well, the concern I've been hearing is, if all this is, as far as this alpha, thing is... that we get, because people who don't have access to alpha are making predictions as to what we'll have access to in alpha, is a starting experience for Drakthir, and that's all there really is, then I'm super concerned about meeting the deadline. And I agree, when we got the Legion test and Legion test was, here are demon hunters and the demon hunter starting experience. That was cool. But if that's all you got to test and you were 5 months out or 6 months out from the thing going live, you get a little nervous as to like where everything else is in the systems and everything, right? Like in this case, being able to test dragon riding, being able to test a lot of the system, the talent trees and stuff that exists, and see, you know, where that stuff's going as far as the direction goes, I'm more hopeful. I am still nervous that like we haven't gotten into too much, and we did actually ask Morgan about this, what that daily loop is going to kind of feel like, and what systems are going to exist in the game for further progression once you hit max level. But we'll get those answers later. It's still early alpha. We'll figure out what's happening with that.
I mean, they've kind of made some allusions to like Zareth Mortis being a potential template for the future, and I think that could be a good direction. So hopefully that does happen. But yeah, I mean, you know, if it'll be interesting to see like how fast things move, how frequently we get builds as we move through this process. I mean, I would imagine probably a build every week or every other week would be reasonable, based on, you know, previous experience with alphas and betas. And then it's like, okay, how fast are they standing up the exterior zones, and how much work do they still need? I mean, I remember in BFA, like there were severe problems with, you know, the zones coming together for the public tests, and they were like rebuilding stuff in Borealis like very late in the process. So, you know, those things do happen. They are not showstoppers somehow. Like, no, whatever was going on with Borealis in beta didn't push that game's, you know, shipping window. So I don't know. I feel like that's the stuff that they can't miss on that stuff, right? If talent stuff is at a whack, they can hot fix that and they can patch it. But, you know, the core gameplay experience of log in to your character, go to the new lands, do quests and stuff and level up, like that's the parts that absolutely have to work, and the talents have to like mechanically function, but they're going to change a billion times from launch until the end of time anyway. So, you know, it's just something to keep in mind as we move through this process. The interesting thing will be to see, you know, when they get feedback, like when we find the pain points in this testing process, like what do they say about them? You know, in Shadowlands, we found several really, really painful points of pain, and they said, we like it like this. We think it'll be okay. We think you'll like it. And some of us tolerated it, and some of us liked it okay, and a lot of people really didn't. And the game and morale around the game suffered for it immensely. So, you know, every expansion is its own beast. It has its own challenges. It has its own, you know, rough edges, and we'll find them with this, and it'll be. I mean, I don't want, you know, angry voices in the community to dictate the development direction of the game, but I also feel like, you know, when you have like sort of overwhelming issues, unhappiness with certain design decisions, that maybe it's worth taking a step back and saying, hey, you know, is this really serving the purpose that we designed it for? And I feel like the team has been so good about that of late that it's not as much of a concern with this. And there's also just fewer overall like areas where some of these issues could creep in. I mean, if they do talent energy and you can only change your talents 10 times before you got to wait 24 hours to change your talent again, that would be a big problem. So, yeah, I don't think we're on that level these days.
No, I think they've learned some lessons from Shadowlands, and hopefully they continue to apply them. All right. If you are listening on audio, you're going to go right into the Morgan Day interview that we did earlier today. So I'll play that now for you. If you are listening on video, you can go and watch the Morgan Day interview, and the link below will take you over to our video for that. I wanted to separate them out on video because I know people just want to see the Morgan stuff. And for those of you who want to hear our impressions, then you can hear our impressions of things, you know, right now. And that's what you're doing inside this video. And I'll name them appropriately, and it'll be all good. All right. So with that, that wraps up episode 530 of The Starting Zone. If you want to check out show notes for this episode or leave a comment on the show, head on over to thestartingzone.com, the official website for the Starting Zone podcast. If you want to contact the show and leave us your feedback or ask a question, You can email us over at thestartingzone@gmail.com, or reach out to us on Twitter, or join our Discord over at thestartingzone.com/discord. And if you want to get your hands on some TSZ gear, you can find that over at TeePublic. That's teepublic.com/stores/thestartingzone. And Jason, where can folks find you on the internet?
Best place to find me, as always, is on Twitter. You can find me over there at Shieldwald, always talking WoW and whatever else I'm getting into. And now I can actually talk about Dragonflight Alpha, so maybe we'll do some of that. You can also find me streaming WoW over on twitch.tv/Shieldwald. Tuesday, Wednesday, and Sunday nights are raids and keystones and stuff. And starting this Monday, I'm going to start doing some Monday evening Eastern time streams of Dragonflight Alpha, just hanging out and playing stuff and checking it out, and whatever people want to chat about it, ask questions, see stuff inside the whatever is going on in the Alpha build. We'll be doing that over there.
Cool. Trying to find me, you can find me on Twitter at Spencer_Downey, over on Twitch at twitch.tv/SpencerHD. And with that, for Jason and myself, we want to say thanks for listening, and jobs done.